Marketing matters when you are a therapist. Marketing matters when you are a therapist because it is a huge part of how people learn about us, figure out about us, and decide whether or not they want to work with us. And I will tell you, I was not planning on going live today. If you are watching this on Instagram on the day that I'm going live on December 10th, you'll see that I created a series of polls to say, hey, did you know I do this thing? If so, did you buy this thing? So for example, I have a poll that says, did you know I have a book? Yes, no. Have you bought my book? Yes, no. Did you know I do coaching sessions? Yes, no. Have you purchased a coaching session with me? Yes, no. Did you know I do custom speaking engagements? Yes, no. Have you booked me for a custom speaking engagement? Yes, no. So the point of these polls, and also I was just going to do a series of stories. I wasn't going to go live about this, but I started to get a little long-winded and realized I need to hop on video for all of you. So the reason that this is important when it comes to being an online person, selling something online, and I know therapists right now are like, selling, ew, bleh, barf, but I'm going to tell you something. Let me rewind. I just wrapped up a launch for Grow a Profitable Practice from the Inside Out, which is a 9-week group coaching program for therapists that helps them with money mindset first before we ever touch things like niching and marketing. I kind of enroll people for a period of a week and a half, 2 weeks. And do you think that I wanted to show up on Instagram every single day for 2 weeks saying, hey, did you know about my program? Did you know about my program? Did you know about my program? No. Do you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to send one email. I wanted to make one blog post, and I wanted to do one Instagram post, and then I wanted to hide. But I didn't, and I couldn't. And here is why. I didn't and I couldn't because this is, one, it's super important to me. The reason I reopened Grow a Profitable Practice from the Inside Out so quickly after having wrapped up the last cohort was because the last cohort was like, Lindsay, that was so helpful. I didn't know that was what I needed. It definitely helped me out. And so when I got that type of feedback, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do it again. So I immediately reopened everything and said, come on in, let's work together, let's go. But I forget that just because I'm excited about it and the 5 folks who went through the first cohort were excited about it, doesn't mean that you know about it, doesn't mean that you want to join, doesn't mean that you think you need it, right? So that's why I had to show up and say again and again and again, hey, this is what I do. This is an offering I have. I would love to see you in it if you are an aligned client. But let's talk a little bit about why I did it, not just here, but also on my podcast, also on my website, also in email, which sounds exhausting and overwhelming, but don't worry. I double down on everything. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's over on Instagram too. If you're watching this here on Instagram, this is on YouTube, right? Because I like to multitask. I think it's really important to make sure that if I'm sharing a message, that I'm sharing a message that reaches as many eyes, ears as possible and decrease the amount of work that I'm doing to do it. Not because I'm like, oh, I don't want to work, but because it just makes sense to repurpose things. So anyway, I shared on email. My email list right now is 1,100, 1,200 people. And of those 1,100 or 1,200 people, not everyone is opening my emails. No. Somewhere, and I have a pretty good open rate, somewhere between 27 and 32% of the time, or of my email list is opening my emails. And even of that, somewhere between 1 and 3% of those people are then clicking on that link. Do you get what I'm saying? So even though it seems like, 1,200 people are seeing this, no, 400 people are seeing it. And of those 400 people, maybe 20 people are clicking on the link. Now, when it comes to Instagram, my personal favorite social media platform, or it had been until the algorithm changed. And don't come at me and tell me the algorithm didn't change. It did, because it had to protect the sanctity of our democracy and the election by shutting down hashtags. So of course, the algorithm changed. Yeah. And I think that's you, AJ, saying love this honesty. Just because everyone doesn't see it doesn't mean it's not 100% worth it. Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to come on here and talk about things if they weren't important to me. So that's email. So then when it comes to Instagram, I have a little over 5,000 followers. And of those 5,000 followers, pre-election, when I did a static post, that would be like a post of a quote or something that's like on the grid, 1,000 people would see it, which is huge, right? That's like what, 20% of my followers would see it. Now, of the people who saw it, it doesn't mean that the people who saw that then went, oh, I know, I want to work with Lindsay. It means they saw it. They might have liked it, they might have saved it, they might have shared it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, cool, I'm ready to work with Lindsay. Now, post the election in the United States, my reach went from like 1,000, 1,500 down to like 200 to 500. It was drastically decreased. Thankfully, I'm comfortable getting on video. Thankfully, I'm comfortable on Reels. So I was able to push my engagement back up by getting on Reels, by getting on video. And then I was able to get back into that like 1,000, 2,000 range that I was at before. So that's Instagram. Now, when it comes to stories, I typically pre-election, my stories would reach around 300 people. Now they're reaching about 100 people, right? So again, if we think about these numbers and why I show up and why I show up so often, it's because not only are folks who are coming on maybe not seeing my stuff, they're also not on all the time, right? I have certain folks who delete their Instagram from Friday night through Sunday. I'm jealous of you. I think that's a brilliant idea. Maybe I'll steal it in 2021, but I'm not there yet. My boundaries are not good enough for that. I have certain people who maybe were out and they just weren't checking their Instagram. So that's why I have Instagram and email, right? I have two different paths that I'm reaching people. But the biggest way that I'm reaching people and the most static way that is kind of open 24/7 is my website, which is why when anyone joined me and Grow a Profitable Practice from the Inside Out, if they didn't already have a beautiful and hardworking website, they would get one from Monica at Hold Space Creative. And she is, if you don't know her, follow her. It's at Hold Space Creative on Instagram. She is a former art therapist turned website designer for therapists. And the reason why I love having a website is because it's more, I don't want to call it set it and forget it because I'm always tweaking my website. I'm always updating blog posts. I'm always updating podcasts, right? But it is more, the term they use is evergreen in the online biz world, right? But it's this idea that if I put up a post that resonates with somebody, they can bookmark it, they can return to it, they can read it, they can save it, they can share it, they can do all those things. Whereas like an Instagram story, that's gone in 24 hours. An Instagram post is buried after 24 hours. An email, just the lifespan, the shelf life of these things is so much shorter, which is why I love having my website that was done by Monica over at Hold Space Creative. So the other reason that I'm telling you all of this, because if you are a therapist and you're like, well, I put up a directory on Psychology Today, nobody's calling me. Yeah. Like, I want to be like, duh, because you don't have a website, you don't have an email list, you don't have an Instagram. And I'm not saying you need all those things, but you definitely need a website. Why? Because that is like your online storefront. If you don't have a website in 2021, people are like, what kind of sketchy human being are you? Why can't I find you on the interweb? An email list, a social media presence for a therapist. Honestly, I could go on and on about it, but I will say you absolutely need a website. So the reason I am telling you why marketing is so important as a therapist is because your clients are going to be the people who are going to want to read, reread, check, and recheck what's going on in your world. They just are, right? They are going to be the ones who read your about page, who read your services page, who think about it for a while. There was an old statistic, and if a marketing therapist can help me out here, I don't remember where it came from, but there was an old stat that it takes a potential client 9 months from when they first start searching for therapy to book a session with a therapist. 9 months. So we want to make it as easy as possible for them to book with us when it makes sense for them, which is why saying things that are super aligned are so, so important, and why I'm so obsessed with having a beautiful and hardworking website. So the other thing, if you are watching this in real time on December 10th, is that in my stories, I have a bunch of polls. Did you know I wrote a book? Yes, no. Have you bought my book? Yes, no, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, hey, Selena. Nice to see you. Knowing is not booking or buying. Knowing is not booking or buying, right? So if you are a therapist and you're out here and you're like, why is nobody booking with me? Because they first have to get to know you. They have to get a sense of your style, your feel, which they can't get if your website is just a stack of rocks. Sorry, not sorry. Remembered, I say that with love, because my first website featured cabbage because I thought cabbage was a cute pun for money. And let me tell you, nobody was like, ooh, I want to work with the cabbage lady. No, they wanted to see a picture of me. They wanted to know about me, and they wanted to know how I specifically could help them. They didn't care about what credentials were behind my name. They didn't care what school I went to. Maybe they did. But really what they wanted to know was, what are Lindsay's credentials and what are Lindsay's, what's Lindsay's approach and how can she specifically help me? That's what they care about. They don't care whether or not I have a certificate in XYZ. I mean, they want to know that I'm a real therapist, which you can see as evidence behind me that I did go to school. I'm a real therapist, not using therapist as a moniker for something else. That's a whole nother song and dance that'll get me riled up. But why I'm saying this to you is that it seems so irritating and so annoying to have to repetitively scream about your services from the rooftop. But when you have some of these systems set up, when you have a beautiful and hardworking website, when you have a social media presence where you're providing aligned psychoeducation to your clients, when you have an email newsletter that calls in the right clients, it makes it easier for both parties. It makes it easier for you as a therapist marketing yourself, and it makes it easier for a potential client who's like, can this person help me? What you are doing by cultivating a marketing presence is saying, yes, I can help you. I know how to help you, and here's who I help. And also, just as important as who you help is who you don't help, right? Like, I don't help kiddos. I don't. That's not my specialty. My specialty is not working with little kiddos. I don't help people who are really at risk for self-harm. That's not in my wheelhouse. I don't help people who are, struggling with other things. Where I light up, where I do my best work is when I'm working with a client who's struggling with financial anxiety, financial shame, financial overwhelm. When it comes to the types of therapists I work best with, it's the therapists who are in constant consumption mode. They're binge listening to all the podcasts, they're reading all the blogs, they're downloading all the freebies, but they're still struggling to invest in themselves. Yeah, right? So I share all of this to say, we're in 2020. People want to know who you are, what you do, and how you can help them. And marketing does that. It's not icky. It's not gross. It's specifically saying, I'm here to help you, and here's how I can do it. And you do have to repeat yourself. And I know that's annoying. It sucks. But it's just the reality. And if you can think about it less of, marketing is icky, marketing is gross, and more, I know I can help this specific type of person. And if they knew I existed, I would help alleviate stress and tension from their life. That's a gift. That's a gift that we have as therapists, is to help a certain subset of people. And don't we want them to know? Yeah. So anyway, I was going to do a series of stories, but as you can tell, I got really long-winded and I had to go live instead. So if you were like, yeah, marketing feels gross, I want you to save this. I want you to rewatch it. If you were like, hey, but I did one email, but nobody's booking, I want you to rewatch this. If you're going, wait, but I put up one really helpful psychoeducational Instagram post, I'm here to say, cool, that's amazing. That's a beautiful start. Now do it again. Strengthen that muscle, as uncomfortable as it is. Put out another blog post. Put out another email. Do another Instagram post. It's not about more, like constantly feeding this content monster, but it's about putting out things that will help your person who's there struggling on the other side of the screen to feel better. And that's why showing up consistently is so important. And if showing up on video isn't your thing, that's totally cool, right? Show up on a blog post, show up on a podcast, show up in your email newsletter, but show up, right? The more you can show up in a way that feels good for you, the more you're going to speak to your ideal client. That's all. So with that, I'm going to go eat my lunch. Thanks for hopping on and letting me share with you why I think marketing is so important for therapists. And let's hope that Instagram this time saves, because I've had 2 lives disappear. That makes me cranky.